So here we are for the intermediate wooden sculpture piece for our final week of our summer program. And we're going to focus on an American artist. Her name is Louise Nevelson. And she is known for her wood relief sculptures. So I'm going to use this iPad to just take a moment to look at some of her pieces that are going to be our inspirations for our relief design. The first thing that I want to show you is in this picture, you can see her in relation to her sculpture to the left. Her pieces do not have to be small and typically are quite large, towering over the common height of man. So when we look at her pieces, we're going to notice a few things. The first thing, let's see if we can. First thing that, I want to show you is that her pieces play with shadow and light. She is known for using one color on a piece. Most of her pieces are either black or white. You can see this example is gold. She has found and used reclaimed objects, and the majority of her pieces that she puts into her relief sculptures are wood. This is another example. This one you can see intricate, almost lace-like spaces and openings in this piece, and how the light and the shadows work with her black paint, and how she's used the different pieces together. This is an up-close version. You can see some of her different forms that she's created. Within this frame, she has created smaller areas that she's worked her design into. And she has not only linear pieces, but also rounded forms. This white piece takes on multiple frames, and you can see that she has the intricate inner workings that she has used to have designs. Whoops. And that's what happens when you click out. Let's go to this one. Very simple. Simple frame. It's set up on a grid, and then within that grid, she has portioned out. So she's got her 4, 4, 4, and 4, and then within those, she has used pieces of wood to create areas that are pleasing to the eye. So that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be using pieces of wood to create a relief sculpture. So relief is when something is built on a flat surface and then it's raised. Something raised comes up from that. You would see an example of a relief sculpture maybe in the tombs of Egypt, from different Egyptian artists who have carved into the stone to create a raised piece of art on a flat background. So that's what we're going to do. We are going to create a raised piece on a flat background. And notice that I don't have any paper or pencil. I really feel like for this, that you're just going to have to move and arrange and explore using the different pieces that you have received from the library. I'm going to follow Louise Nevelson in the one color schema so that I can play more with the shapes and the light and the shadows. You can just see from me placing these three on this foam board that it's already playing with shadow. You can see that just from me doing that one thing. So I'm going to play with that by using one color. I'm going to leave it up to you whether or not you want to use one color like she did, or whether you want to use a different idea. So what happens sometimes when someone is designing, specifically using found pieces similar to Louise Nevelson, is that you kind of, have to play around with your items. You have to have some different pieces, and the whole idea is creating an interesting composition, an interesting design to look at. So remember, we're looking from a bird's eye view. The relief sculpture, we're going to look down on it, and creating a composition or a piece that is pleasing to the eye by layering and overlapping different shapes, different widths, different sizes of items. And by overlapping and using different shapes, we're going to be able to create an interesting design. So I'm going to take a few moments to look through my wood pieces. If you've already gotten a grab bag of pieces from the library and you start playing around with it, you start fiddling with it, and it's just not working the way you want it to, then stop, pause on that, maybe sketch it, put it back in the bag, and then go back and ask for a few different things that you can use. So let's take a few moments to gather our wooden pieces to create our wooden relief sculpture. So I have figured out some of the pieces I'm going to play around with. I have not determined how many I'm going to use yet, or if I'm going to use all of them, but I've chosen different pieces because of maybe the differences in length. Maybe I've chosen some of them because of the texture they're going to give visually to my piece. Maybe I have chosen them based on their thicknesses that I can raise up for my relief sculpture. Maybe I have chosen some pieces for their interesting shapes that I'm going to be able to duplicate or create a pattern with, create some overlapping with. So the first thing that I'm going to do, I'm still kind of in my playing stage, is figuring out how I'm going to use the different thicknesses of wood that I have as my base. And so I'm going to kind of play around for a few moments, almost like a puzzle. It's almost like I'm creating some sort of visual puzzle with my eyes, filling in spaces in parts. And I'm even okay with maybe parts. I'm going to turn this around because this is what I'm looking at or viewing. Maybe I'm even okay with the base being shown in certain spots. So I've raised with my wooden pieces, and now I'm deciding if that's where I want to stop, and that is where I want to be. So as of right now, I'm finished with my first layer of my assemblage, and this will be the background for the rest of my piece that I'm going to create. I'm going to use this to build upon with all these other interesting shapes and pieces. And so this is non-objective. She names her pieces. You'll look at it and you'll see that she's named her piece, but the assemblage doesn't necessarily look like what she's named it. So that's something to think about as you continue. You can have an idea or a design in mind, but maybe it's not going to look anything like that. Maybe it's a feeling. Maybe it's something that is a reminder. And as you're starting to play with your wooden pieces, yes, that's going to happen because we're not putting it down yet. As you're playing with your pieces, you're looking from a bird's eye view. You're looking down because this is a relief. We're building up. And think about how you can layer piece upon piece. Okay, you just saw whenever I moved this that it rolled off, but whenever we go back and whenever we start putting it together and gluing it down, then your pieces will stay where you put them. Okay, so we're looking down and we're creating a visual, interesting idea. If you accidentally move something, just move it back. So part of this is playing around with your space, balancing your heaviness, balancing, and when I say balancing, I don't mean balancing like standing something up. We're visually balancing. You're looking at it and you're saying, okay, this space is balanced by this space. This area is balanced by this area. So that's what I mean by trying to balance. Think about how you can layer your pieces, your shapes, to create an interesting look. And if you don't like something, then pick it up and move it. That's the fun part right now. Of what we're doing. as you're working and as you're moving your wooden pieces around and you're exploring with them, how can you repeat something? We know that when we repeat things, they create patterns. How can you create something that's visually interesting to look at when it's just being raised off of something flat and it's all one color? Think about repeating. I've repeated these dowels or spindles to create an interesting design. What can you do on your piece? Move your things around. Maybe come back and see if you need to add something else if an area is getting too heavy. Maybe look at sometimes I have to turn things around. To see if one way is better than another. And I am one of those where I have to look at things. So I'm probably going to leave this here for a while and then come back and look at it another time to see how I feel about it. And I'm definitely going to take a moment every once in a while and stand up to look up over this piece. So I started with that flat two-dimensional base, and I built upon it using these forms, cubes and rectangular prisms. And now I'm starting to add some rounded elements to this. And I'm just going to take some time to play with how this is looking, where things are going. And balancing one side to the other. So let's take a moment. I'm going to turn this around. And these two dowels at the bottom are probably going to roll off, but that's okay. Just put it back. So far looking, and I can't raise my piece because it is not glued down or fixed yet, but so far looking at my piece, I am raising and creating a visually interesting design using my different pieces of wood in the style of Louise Nevelson. So I want you to continue to move your wooden pieces around. Maybe you are repeating some pieces. Maybe you are working with areas that are thick and some that are raised higher to create an interesting height and depth in your piece. Maybe you have worked on balancing. If I have two short, thick pieces here, I'm going to have two longer, skinnier pieces here. Maybe you're thinking about texture in your piece. So take some time to work with the pieces that you've gotten in your grab bag. Once again, if you need to step away from a little bit, make sure that this is in a safe place. Maybe you're going to take a quick picture with your mom's phone so that you don't forget what it looks like. Put it in a safe place if you're at a stopping point so that you don't have to start all the way over again. You could, at this point, sketch it quickly so that you don't forget what you've done so far. So take some time, look at your piece, and ask yourself, am I creating a visually interesting piece when I look down at it that shows balance, variety, maybe pattern and texture? These are all the things that we are thinking about as we're creating with these random pieces of wood. And if you don't have what you need, go back and ask for some more.